Hello everyone, welcome back to the Stitches in STEM YouTube channel. My name is Michaela and this is podcast episode number 32. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. If you don't know me, as I said, my name is Michaela and I'm a knitter from Dublin, Ireland, and here on YouTube I like to do what every other knitter on YouTube does and just talk about my knitting. I have a confession to make. I have already recorded this video. This is my second time. My camera battery was low and I thought I would be able to finish recording the whole thing, but I think I had about 10 minutes left. Like, I had just finished talking about my last whip when my battery died. So I put the battery on charge and I brought my dog for a walk, and now I'm back, full battery. And I also figured I'll just redo the video because while I was recording it, I knew my battery was low and I think I had it in my head that I need to get through all my filming. So I felt a little bit rushed and I probably wouldn't have been 100% happy with the footage that came out. I think it would have come across like I was rushing, and I don't like that. So I decided to re-record it, and now I have all the time in the world, so we can take our time. As always, everything I talk about in today's video will be linked in the description box below. So that's patterns, like the link to the Ravelry page, the link to my project page, the link to all the yarns that I use. I also have a link to my yarn shop directory down below, which was originally intended to be helpful to Irish knitters, but it would be helpful to knitters anywhere in the EU basically. It's a directory of yarn shops that stock some of the more popular European brands like Issayer, Knitting for Olive, Santa's Garn, and that ship outside their own country. Again, I made it originally for Irish knitters because it's quite hard to get a lot of those brands in Ireland. For some of those brands, it's actually impossible to get them in person. So I made that directory so that Irish knitters could find out how to get Issayer or Knitting for Olive from other places in the EU. So as always, that's linked down below, and if you do find it helpful or if you want to support the channel, I will also link my Ravelry wishlist down below. I never plug that, but it's always there. I do occasionally get messages from people asking if I have a wish list because they want to support the channel or that they want to send me a pattern and asking if there's a pattern that I'd like, which I'm obviously very grateful for, but I feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed saying it because there's no expectation on my end. Like, I'm fortunate enough to have a full-time job and I can afford patterns when I need to buy them, so there is no obligation or pressure or expectation to send me patterns. You don't have to do that, but just in case you wanted to, the link is there, and that's all I'll say on that. I am wearing my Monday sweater. This is a pattern by Petite Knit and it's a raglan stockinette jumper. I knit this in pigment and ply, just a stock yarn. It was a hand-dyed yarn and it was like a one-of-a-kind colourway, so I don't know the colour name, and I held it with Filcolana Tilia in the colour Frisia, which was a very pale purple. I did talk about this on the podcast, but it's a raglan stockinette jumper. There's not much to say, but if you want to hear what I have to say about it, you can have a look through my channel and you'll find it there, and the Ravelry project page will also be linked down below. With that all out of the way, let's jump into my first and only finished object, which is this self-drafted broken rib slouch hat that I made for my boyfriend. I showed this in the last episode. I think I had about half of the length done, so I've obviously finished it now. I have not woven in the ends. I think there's only two. There's one here and one from the cast on. I haven't woven those in, but I have blocked it, and so it's otherwise ready to wear. I knit this in Prosper yarn Merino DK. So Prosper yarn is a New Zealand based hand dyer, and the Merino DK is a 100% New Zealand merino wool, so very special yarn that we picked up on our travels in New Zealand. And this colourway is called Not Old Lady Red. I wouldn't call it a tonal red because I think there is so much shift in colour tonality here. I wouldn't say it's variegated, but I definitely wouldn't call it a tonal. It's like halfway between variegated and a tonal. There is actually quite a variation in the red colour, and I think this stitch pattern complements the colourway beautifully. Like, I could not have picked a better stitch pattern to use with this colourway. The broken rib actually went by quite fast. I really enjoyed working with this. I think I talked about it in my last episode, you know, being a superwash merino, it just moves really easily through my hands and on my needles, and it was a very satisfying knit. I'm quite sad that it's over, and I definitely think I need to find something else to fill the gap. All of my other projects are quite intense on my hands at the moment, so I definitely think that I need something a little bit more easygoing that can be a bit of a respite from those projects. So the only thing I have to really talk about is the decreases. I did a 10-point spiral decrease. I mentioned in the last episode that I was going to do 6 points, but I had cast on 102 stitches. If I was decreasing by 6 stitches every second round, that would mean that my entire crown would be 34 rows, I think, which was nearly half the length of the whole hat, if I'm remembering correctly. Or it was maybe like 40% of the length of the whole hat. And I just thought the crown would be taking up far too much of the length if I did that way. So that meant I needed fewer decrease rounds, which then meant I needed more decreases per round. So I decided to do a 10-point spiral decrease instead. And because I had cast on 102 stitches, I initially just did a sneaky decrease round where I decreased 2 stitches, so I had 100, which obviously is a very nice multiple of 10. And from there I was able to do 10 decreases every second round, so that I had 20 rounds in the crown. Yeah, 20 rounds instead of 34. And I think the proportion of crown to the rest of the hat is much more natural looking, I think. I really like the spiral decreases. I'd probably do them again. If you don't know, spiral decreases are made by only working one type of decrease, so either a knit two together or a slip split knit or something else if you want. But just working that one type of decrease makes all the decreases lean the same way, so you get that kind of spiral. I've only ever worked decreases where I have both the knit two together and the slip slip knit, and I do like it, but I feel like this actually gives a much kind of rounder top. When I think of the hats I've done that have a 4-point decrease with a knit two together and a slip slip knit on either side of a column of stitches, I feel like sometimes you get a kind of a very geometric shape on top, like you get like flat edges in between that column of stitches, and then that column of stitches creates like a corner almost between the two flat edges. It's never been a problem, I've never hated it, but I think for this being a slouch hat, it's kind of nice to have just like a very shapeless crown as opposed to like something with a point. I will try it on, but it's not for me, and I don't like slouch hats really. I feel like they have a very specific aesthetic, and it's not the aesthetic that I like to wear, so I don't wear them. But I do think it suits me, but not enough that I would be converted to wearing one. My boyfriend has tried it on before it was blocked and he loved it. It fits perfectly. I mentioned in the last episode that he can be a bit fussy, so I was really, really happy that he was pleased with this. And yeah, I'll give it to him now that I've shown it on the podcast. Now that it's blocked, I'll just weave in these ends and I'll give it to him. So yeah, that is my broken rib slouch beanie. As I said, a really enjoyable project, and I'm kind of on the hunt for something that can fill the gap that this one has now left. Because I've already recorded this video, my voice is already a little bit tired, so please do excuse any vocal fry that you might hear. My next whip is my Holly sweater by Petite Knit. I was about to say it's Pernille Larsen from Knitting for Olive, and this is my Christmas jumper for this year. Actually, my only Christmas jumper that I've ever knit, so I'm very excited about this one. As you can see, it's a colourwork yoke and then just plain stockinette for the rest of the jumper. In the last episode, I was almost finished the body and I had started working the first sleeve. I've now finished the body and the first sleeve, so I've made some significant progress with this, and I've started the second sleeve. I'm very much hoping to have this finished tomorrow or the day after. Basically in the next day or two, I want to have this finished. Today is 22nd of November. If you're watching this on like the 30th of November, yes, it does take me a week to edit sometimes, okay? But yeah, today is the 22nd of November, and yeah, I definitely think I'm going to have this done before December. I don't know if the 1st of December is an appropriate time to wear a Christmas jumper. Like, I'm in a Christmas mood. I definitely am. I actually listened to Christmas music on my commute home the other day. I felt like a bold child because I was like driving in silence, and I was like, what will I listen to? I was like, I was kind of in a Christmas mood. I was like, will I put on my Christmas music? No, you can't. It's only like the 15th of November. And then I just thought to myself, Michaela, you're a grown woman. If you want to listen to Christmas music on the 1st of July, you can do that. So I put on my Christmas music and it put me in the best mood. So I have no regrets. Anyway, back to this jumper. This is knit using another New Zealand yarn. So this one is from Wild Earth Yarns, and it's their Aspen 8-ply base, which is 100% Polworth yarn. Technically it's a DK weight yarn, but if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I did not find this to be a DK weight yarn. I could not meet gauge with that yarn. So the pattern gauge is 21 stitches and 10 centimeters. My gauge is 18 stitches and 10 centimeters. The difference is so significant that even knitting the smallest size in the pattern would have led to a jumper that was still too big for me. So I had to make up my own size using my own gauge. The biggest potential for this jumper to not work out is coming from the fact that the yoke was all knit before I decided to make up my own size. So I knit the yoke according to pattern, and then I just adjusted my last increase round to change the stitch count in the body and the sleeve to a more suitable size for me. And then I split the body and sleeve according to those calculations. So I think it still should work out, but I don't know, it might look a bit lumpy and bumpy just because of those changes that I made after finishing the yoke according to pattern. So far, I think it looks okay, and yeah, it does look a bit lumpy and bumpy, especially when I try it on. But I do think blocking will help with a lot of that, and if blocking doesn't eliminate 100% of the bumpiness, I'm okay with that. If it eliminates like 80%, I'm okay with that. Part of what's helping me accept the imperfections with this jumper is the fact that it's a Christmas jumper, and I will only be wearing it for 1 out of 12 months of the year. If it was a jumper that I could wear year round and it didn't fit me right, or there was some other imperfection that annoyed me that prevented me from wearing it, it would bother me that that jumper wasn't being worn. I'm not going to be bothered about not wearing this in June because it's not a jumper that I would wear in June. So I'm okay with the imperfections that are associated with this jumper for me. Speaking of imperfections, the other one is I worked a 2x2 rib for the hem, which I really like, but I did a tubular bind off for 2x2 rib, and I followed a tutorial that I have used before, and it's always worked out pretty well. But for whatever reason on this yarn, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look very neat. I think it looks bumpy, and I am tempted to redo it, but that would involve picking it out, and I just don't think I'm going to want to do that. Once I finish this sleeve, I'm not going to want to put this back on the needles at all. Even though there are things that I would potentially change, I think I'm going to be happy with keeping it as is for this year, and I can make those changes for next year if I want. So that's one change I would make, is the bind off on the hem. I might even do that this year. I don't know, we'll see. And then the other change is the collar. So after doing the 2x2 rib on the hem and the cuff, I realised I preferred it over the 2x1 rib on the collar. I do like the 2x1 rib. I think there's a bit more texture and a bit more visual interest there, but something about this 2x2 rib, I just think it would look really nice in the collar. So that's something else that I might redo next year, but I think for this year, I'm quite happy to keep it as is. And then also for the, sorry, I feel like I'm jumping around a lot with this. For the sleeve cuff, I actually did a regular bind off there. So I just did a knit or 2 knits, pass the first one over, purl, pass the previous one over, that kind of thing. And I think that looks better than the tubular bind off that I did on the hem. So if I redid the tubular bind off on the hem, I would just do a standard bind off. Apart from the stitch count in the sleeve, I'm not making any changes to the sleeve. So my decrease rate is the same as in the pattern. And I also have the same number of decreases in the pattern because strangely enough, my row gauge was spot on. So I didn't need to make any changes to my decrease rate. I'm actually going to try this on because I don't have to move it over to tubing or anything. So I'll put in some B-roll footage of me trying it on. You can see the length and everything. I don't think it's going to grow too much with blocking. If you've been here before, you will know already that I've blocked the yoke 3 times now, I think. So I kind of know how the fabric behaves with blocking. I feel like you can definitely see where I blocked it. I put a photo up on Instagram and you can definitely see the line where the unblocked fabric starts. This wool really blooms after blocking and it really just fills in all the gaps. I don't know if you can see it as well on the camera, but I'll put a photo up and you'll be able to see that, you know, you can definitely see where the fabric is blocked versus unblocked. I just think it's really interesting. But yeah, that is my holly sweater. Very excited about this. We're on the home stretch now, which I'm so relieved about, and can't wait to wear it. My next whip is my Ovie Cardigan Test Knit for Joy-In of Tox Knits. The yarn that I'm using for this is Lamana Como Grande in the colour Rust, held with Lamana Premia in the colour Chestnut Brown. The yarns were provided for the test knit and I'm knitting this on 5mm needles, and I think I'm knitting the size small, potentially. I can't remember right now, but I can put it up on the screen. So this cardigan is just a round neck cardigan with this gorgeous V cable here. It's a really unique kind of cable. And then on the back, you've got the cables on either side of a double moss stitch panel. In the last episode, I had started working on the second front panel. I think it was I can't remember if it was the right or left. I had done one front panel and I was working on the second. So I've since joined under the arms and I've made quite a bit of progress on the body. I think I've got one more of these diamond repeats to do before I can start the ribbing. So it is going a little bit faster than I thought it would. I think the large needles help. I mean, they're large to me, 5mm. I can't remember the last time I worked with 5mm needles. It's just not something I do that often. I feel like I'm spending a lot less time knitting each row than I have done for other cabled cardigans or jumpers that I've made. So definitely feel like this is moving quite fast. I don't really have much to say about this because it's a test knit, and I don't really like talking too much about test knits because the patterns aren't finalized. So I tend to kind of save anything that I have to say for once the pattern is out and finalized, because any issues or errors that I find might have been addressed by then. I've only noticed one kind of significant mistake in one of the charts, but it's already been corrected in an updated version of the pattern. And it was one of those mistakes where I just knew it was a mistake. I was looking at the chart and I was like, that's not right. You know, it was like a cable going the wrong way, and I knew it should have been going the other way. So it's not like I knit it and then found out it was a mistake and had to knit back. Like, I messaged her and said, is this chart correct? I'm assuming the cables are supposed to be going the other way. And she confirmed that they were, and she sent me the corrected version. So very on top of correcting those mistakes. So yeah, so far so good. It's already quite a well-written pattern and it's only in testing. So I think it's only going to get better once the final version is out. So yeah, I'm going to keep working away on this, hoping to get the body done this week. I think I'm going to do the collar and the ribbing and everything. Like, I'm going to finish the body completely first. The pattern does have a double knit button band, but I asked if I could do a 1x1 rib band instead, and Joyen said that was fine. So that's what I'm going to do for that. And I'll move on to the sleeves. The deadline is the middle of December. I did say in the last episode I wasn't sure if I was going to make that. There's actually a chance that I might make that now, especially if I finish my holly sweater within the next day or two, and this will be my main focus. I think I will get this done, to be honest. So yeah, that's my Ovie cardigan. My last whip is a pair of socks, and I've been wanting to cast on these socks since last Christmas. These are my self-striping Christmas socks using self-striping yarn from Mud Punch, who's a Canadian self-striping yarn dyer. I had this yarn delivered to a friend who lives in Canada, and when she came home last Christmas, she brought it home with her. So this has been sitting in my stash since then, and I've been looking at it, waiting for the right moment to cast on my Christmas socks, and I'm so excited to finally have them on the needles. I'm not going to be able to say self-striping socks as many times as I need to in this video, just warning you. I have knit self-striping socks with Mud Punch yarn before. That was my first pair of self-striping socks, and I found the yarn just a little bit unusual to work with. I wouldn't say, yeah, maybe not difficult. It was a little bit more difficult than other sock yarns that I've used, but it wasn't difficult. You know what I mean? I just needed to put more tension into my hands to work the stitches, but I didn't really mind it. It just wasn't as easy as other sock yarns that I've used. And I looked into it at the time, and this yarn is, I think it's called a cabled yarn if I'm remembering correctly, but basically it's a 4-ply yarn, so I can see all the 4 plies, but each of those plies is itself a 2-ply yarn. So I'm going to show a close-up. So in the close-up you can see that it's 4 plies, and each of those plies is individually a 2-ply yarn, and I think that's what makes it feel the way it does in my hands. I'm assuming that plied and then plied again construction gives it more structure and strength, and especially for a sock yarn, that extra strength and durability is quite valuable, but it's just not as easy to use as other sock yarns that I've used. It's not a deal breaker for me, and I'd still buy from them again in the future, but it probably wouldn't be my first choice for sock yarns. For the contrast heel, I'm using Filcolana Arwetta in the colour Marzipan. I've used this exact colour, I think 3 times in different socks now. I've used it twice for a contrast heel and toe, and I've also used it for stripes along the cuff. I just think it goes really well with a lot of the sock yarns that I own. So yeah, I'm getting great value out of that one ball of Filcolana Arwetta. So I cast on 56 stitches for these, and I worked 2x2 rib for the cuff. And I think I worked it for 17 rounds. So I knew I wanted around 20 rounds, but I also knew that I wanted the cuff to end at a stripe so that the stockinette part could start another stripe. Each of these stripes is about 7 rounds. So I think I had done 17 rounds of the cuff. I reached the end of the pink stripe, and I realized that if I worked another stripe, it would be about 24 rounds, which was too tall. So I decided to stop at 17 rounds. I've started my second one, and as you can see, the stripes are lining up very nicely. So to achieve that, I basically wound up my skein. I weighed it and it was about 110 grams, I think. So I wound off 55 grams and I then just kept winding until I was at the start of the mint green colour, because it had started on the mint green colour. So that way I had two roughly 55 gram balls that both started at this mint green colour. I did that last time I made self-striping socks as well, but on those socks I didn't really account. I just assumed that that first stripe on both balls would be the same length. On the ball that would have been the very, very start of the hank, it was actually shorter. So it meant that that stripe was a little bit shorter on one sock than on the other. And so with these, I took that mint green colour from both balls and I wound it, I pulled it out and I held them against each other and I just compared the length. And indeed one of them was shorter than the other. So I lined them up so that the second colour started at the same point. Then I went back to the very start of the strand and I cut them so that they were both the same length. Hope that makes sense, but that's basically how I made sure that my stripes were exactly the same size, even the very first stripe. I'm working a heel flap and gusset for these, and on my last pair of self-striping socks, I think I did a shadow wrap heel, and I just wasn't happy with the fit. I am never happy with the fit of a shadow wrap heel. I've tried adding increases beforehand, I've tried adding loads of increases beforehand, I've tried adding no increases, and I'm just never happy. I just feel like it's never deep enough for my heel, and I like a deep heel. So for these, I decided I'm doing a heel flap and gusset. What put me off doing a heel flap and gusset was that I thought that the stripes would look really weird after when you're doing the gusset decreases, because you have so many more stitches in the round. So the stripes are going to be narrower than the rest of the stripes. But I actually don't think it's that noticeable. I should have just stuck with my heel flap and gusset for the first self-striping socks that I made. But I know for future, just do a heel flap and gusset. It's not going to make that big of a difference to the striping pattern. I've been working on these a lot in the cinema. So I've been to the cinema a couple of times in the last week or so, and I'm going again tomorrow. So we saw The Running Man and we saw Predator Badlands. They're both fine. They're not going to win Oscars anytime soon, but I would much rather watch a movie like that for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Like it might not be a great movie, you know, maybe the plot isn't great or the acting is a bit cringy or something. I'd much rather watch a movie like that than something like, I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but something like Oppenheimer or Manx. I saw Manx last year and I was so bored. I'm sure there is an audience for it and there's people who would appreciate it, but that's just not me. I'm not that audience. So if you enjoyed those movies, I'm delighted for you, really happy for you. They're not my kind of thing. So yeah, we've been seeing some kind of very mid movies the last week or two, but they've been entertaining to me and I've been able to get some good progress in my sock done. So we're going to the cinema again tomorrow. Guess what we're going to see? My nails are a clue. I'm very excited. Oh my god. My socks are also unintentionally on theme with the pink and green. Amazing. Okay. I can knit stockinette in the round without looking. In the cinema, I would only do it if there's no stranger sitting beside me. My boyfriend doesn't mind it, and if I go with anyone else, my family or friends, I would ask them if they mind if I knit, and they might say, yeah, that's fine, no problem, I won't care. But I would also say to them, okay, but let me know if you change your mind, because you might think that you won't mind, but maybe in half an hour it will bother you seeing my hands like this out the corner of your eye. But for the most part, I go to the cinema with my boyfriend and he doesn't mind. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of progress done on these socks. My plan is to finish the gusset decreases before the cinema tomorrow and I can work on the foot of this sock. So yeah, as I said, very much in the Christmas mood. I already have my other Christmas socks planned as well, so I'm very excited for all of those. And that's actually all I have to talk about today. I feel like it was definitely a shorter episode, but I'm not going to have a chance to record for another 2 weeks. And if I leave it that long between videos, I'll have way too much to talk about in that episode. So I figured I should sit down today and show you what little updates I have. So I hope you don't mind the shorter episode. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everyone who left comments regarding my knitting slump that I talked about in the last episode. I'm still kind of feeling the same way. But what I did that I found actually helped a little bit was I went onto Ravelry and I found that a lot of patterns that I like and I've seen before and I've thought to myself, that's a nice pattern. Some of them I haven't favorited. So I went through kind of For example, I went to Mareka Knit's Ravelry page and I haven't favorited any of her patterns, even though some of them are really, really nice and I really want to make them. So when I'm kind of looking through my favorites for ideas of what to cast on next, a lot of the things that I've seen before, they're not in my favorites list. And so it just doesn't occur to me that, I should cast on one of those. I think that's part of the reason I'm in a bit of a knitting slump, is that I've kind of been looking at the same patterns in my favorites for so long, even though so many new patterns have been coming out in the last few months that I could have been adding to my favorites, and I just, for whatever reason, forgot. Like, I scroll past them on Ravelry and I'm like, yeah, that's nice. And then I just keep scrolling. I should have been favoriting them because, yeah, as I said, I'm kind of looking at the same patterns over and over again in my favorites and they're just not inspiring to me anymore. And it might be the case that I want to make them sometime, but they're not inspiring me right now. Whereas when I went onto Mareka Knit's Ravelry page, there was so many patterns there that I was thinking I could cast that on next week. And I think I would really enjoy making one of those. And I think it would excite me to make one of those. So that's something that I did that helped. Another thing that I think might help is making a Sophie shawl or Sophie scarf, which I know sounds really basic, but it kind of would scratch that itch that I'm talking about with regards to my broken rib hat. It's not basic stockinette, but it's simple enough and it's a small project-ish. Depends on how big you want to make it, obviously. And I have made a few variations of the Sophie shawl / scarf. 3 of them I've given away, and one of them is my own. In the last few days, my mum has been stealing it to wear. So then I was thinking maybe I can make mum a Sophie scarf or a Sophie shawl for Christmas. And I feel like that would kind of get me out of a knitting slump. I don't have any yarn for one. She loves pink, so I would love to knit her a pink one. But I don't have any pink yarn that isn't already assigned to another project. So I would have to buy yarn if I wanted to do that. And I don't really want to buy yarn right now. So much to think about. But I did get a lot of lovely comments from you guys. Someone even gifted me a pattern on Ravelry. And I was not expecting that at all. That wasn't, it wasn't my reason for talking about my knitting slump. I didn't expect that. But yeah, I just got loads of lovely comments, loads of lovely suggestions and ideas of what I could do to help get out of it. And then some people just saying, let the knitting slump happen. It happens to us all and it'll pass. And so that was really reassuring as well. I will say I don't feel under pressure to knit just to make content. That's something that I'm really happy about in myself, that I don't feel I need to knit because I have to have something to show. I just don't feel like that. And I think that's a good way to feel. I think it's a healthy way to feel, because at the end of the day, knitting is supposed to be, for me, like the joy that it brings me. I do love sharing it on YouTube, and I love consuming other people's content on YouTube and getting inspiration that way. But the number one thing that knitting does for me is that it just gives me a hobby to work on. And even if there wasn't YouTube or Instagram, I would still be knitting. That's why I don't feel under pressure to make content, because it's not my priority with knitting. My priority is just doing something with my hands and producing some nice garments or accessories or whatever it is. But a lot of people still left comments saying, don't feel under pressure to knit for YouTube. So I really appreciate it, the reassurance. It is still nice to hear that. So thank you very much for everyone who left a comment about knitting slumps. In the time that I was charging my battery, I decided to wind up some yarn, and I worked a swatch just to try and, give myself something new to work with and maybe spark some inspiration. So the first yarn that I wound up was, well, maybe not that exciting. It's just for my next pair of socks. This is from the Olivia and Oliver Fibers sock set advent calendar from last year. So the sock set advent calendar came with 5 sock sets, one for each season of the year, and then a Christmas one. I actually sold the Christmas one because the colour wasn't really my thing, but I really, really love this one. This is the winter one. Actually, I love all of them. The other 4 I really, really loved. And this one is the winter one, so I think it's a perfect time of year to cast this on. This is going to be my next sock cast on once my striped socks are done. And I'm thinking I'll do like just a textured sock, maybe like Hermione's Everyday, what's that what they're called? Hermione's Everyday Socks? Hermione's Favourite Socks, something like that, like a broken rib, or just something with an all over texture, but nothing too crazy. And then the other yarn that I wound up was definitely not seasonal. This is a summer yarn from Australia. It's Great Ocean Road Woolen Mills, and it's their Summer Fiesta base, which is a merino linen blend. I can't remember what the colour is called, but it's a lovely dark green, and because it's merino linen, it almost looks like undyed sections, but I think it leads to a lovely marled fabric. When I bought this yarn, I bought 3 skeins of this, so it was 1,300 meters, I think. It's fingering weight yarn, and I bought 3 skeins, and I didn't know what I wanted to make with it, but when I got home, I thought that I wanted to make something like blouse number 1, or I think that was the only one of those boat neck long sleeve tops that was out at the time. But after that, the Sabai sweater by Suzanne Muller came out as well. So I really like those patterns, but both of those are knit on a much larger gauge than I could get with this yarn. So the Sabai sweater is a 21 stitch gauge, and I don't know what blouse number 1 is, but I know it's around that. It's definitely a lot larger than what I would be able to get with this. So my thinking was, if I could get 24 stitches even, I could like modify the pattern to make it fit and like basically self-draft it, because I'd be modifying it so much that I'd basically be rewriting it. But I would feel confident in my ability to do that. So I was quite happy to do that. My concern would be related to the amount of yarn that I had. So the Sabai sweater as it stands, with the gauge that the pattern suggests, I think uses 900 meters from my size. And as I said, I have 1,300 meters of this, but I'd be knitting at a much tighter gauge. Like, I was thinking if I knit a 24 stitch gauge, I'll probably have enough yarn. I don't know, like, I didn't do any calculations to come up with that. I just kind of guessed. So I don't know, I could be way off. But I decided to knit up swatch anyway. So I knit this on 3mm needles, and I'm currently getting about 22 stitches in 10 centimeters, which is actually quite close to the gauge of the Sabai sweater. But even on 3mm needles, I was surprised the gauge was that large. I thought it would be a little bit smaller. So I'm not really sure where this leaves me, because this fabric is too open. I want it to be a long sleeve top that it's not a jumper. Like, I want to be able to wear it on its own. And so the fabric needs to be denser. So if this is 22 stitches, I know you can't tell on camera, but it is too open and I wouldn't be able to wear it without wearing something underneath. I don't know if 24 stitches would be that much better. I think it would have to be at least 26 stitches for it to be a fabric that I'd be comfortable wearing on its own. So I'm going to put this aside for now. It was fun to swatch, but I think I'll probably revisit in the spring when it is a more seasonally appropriate fabric. The only reason I swatched with this was because it's the only other yarn I have out of storage at the moment. So I showed my big vacuum bag of yarn in the last episode, and basically I haven't opened that yet. I know I talked about potentially opening it, but I didn't get around to it, but I will soon. But in the meantime, I only have 2 kind of jumper quantities of yarn that aren't stored away in that vacuum bag. One of them is for the self-drafted pattern that I talked about in the last episode, but I also want to do a project vlog about that pattern, and so I want to talk about the process of swatching for the pattern, because it's going to have cables, the process of picking which cables to swatch for. So that footage will all include winding up the yarn and working the swatch. So that's why I didn't want to do that today. And the only other yarn that I have in a quantity large enough to make a garment with is this merino linen one. So definitely not seasonal, but at least I know now what my rough gauge is on those 3mm needles, and I think I'll just revisit it again in spring or summer. And that's all I have to talk about today. So as I said, a short and sweet episode. I'm also losing the daylight. I think that's going to be a recurring feature of my next few videos, lack of daylight. So apologies in advance for that. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what you're working on. And if you're not subscribed already, please do consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this one. But until next time, happy knitting. Bye.